What's up, beautiful people? This is Troy LaRaviere, president of the Chicago Principals and Administrators Association. This will be the first clip we release from a multi part interview with the candidates for mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson and Paul Vallas. And to be transparent at the outset, both of these men are friends of mine. I met Paul Vallas in 2015 when we were both panelists on a panel for the City Club. Um, and at that time, he was actually one of the first people to suggest to me that I run for president of the Principals Association because I was a principal of Blaine Elementary School at the time. I got to know Paul a little bit more when we were both candidates for mayor of Chicago in the 2019 elections. We did many debates together, and unlike many of the other candidates, Paul and I actually got along and had respect for one another. And I met Brandon Johnson in 2016 when we were both Bernie Sanders delegates at the Democratic National Convention. I got to know Brandon even more over the years because whenever there was a CTU contract provision or CTU was trying to do something, he would give me a call or text and ask me, what do principals feel about this? What is the principal position on this? I remember clearly when they were thinking about having SROs removed from schools. He texted me and called and asked, what is the principal position? How do principals feel about this? And so I really appreciated the fact that he would reach out to find out what principals thought, because not everybody in CTU does that. So again, in transparency, these are both friends of mine, and I am extremely grateful for them for coming into CPAA studios in the room next door to respond to the questions and concerns of the principals and assistant principals of Chicago Public Schools. One of the common concerns about the candidates was their backers. So for Johnson, it was CTU. For Vallas, it was FOP. And instead of asking them, will you let the FOP get whatever they want, or will you let the CTU get whatever they want, I crafted a question that would be kind of a litmus test that would give us the answer to the question more so than if we just asked that question directly. So for Paul Vallas, it was, will you implement the consent decree? For Brandon Johnson, it was, will you give principals binding input in the CTU contract if a contract provision has a substantial impact on a principal's work and work environment or working conditions? And so you're about to see their answers. First up, Brandon Johnson, and he will be followed by Paul Vallas, both candidates for mayor of Chicago.
So there's this concern, I'm sure you've heard it, about your connections with CTU and who's going to run the mayor's office. So instead of asking that question, I thought I'd come up with a litmus test that would give us the answer to it, really. And that question is, when a proposed contract provision for one bargaining unit like CTU, substantially impacts another unit's work. So if there's a provision in the CTU contract that would substantially impact a principal's work, should the other bargaining unit be consulted and have to be at the table as well to work out that particular provision if it impacts substantially their work day and their working conditions?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wish the press was as smart as teachers and educators, right? That absolutely has to happen. And in fact, Troy, this has happened in multiple occasions, on multiple occasions. We do know what's best as educators, uh, what our students need and what our school communities need to look like and reflect. And so the Chicago Teachers Union, working with the Principals Association around provisions in that contract that have impact on everyone should be at the table to finalize those particular dynamics. And I think that there will be more opportunities under my leadership, right? Because that is the collaborative spirit in which we come from as teachers and administrators when we have to come together to figure out the best needs for our local school. And so I believe we take that professionalism to the bargaining table
Mhm.
so that all parties impacted by this contract have weight as well as direction that can be offered to have a contract that works for everyone.
And to follow up on that, you have actually directly called me
Yeah.
when you guys were negotiating. What happened behind the scenes? Was that just you thinking, I need to know what principals feel about this particular contract provision? Was that something coming from inside the union? Like, what motivated the times you reached out to get the principal perspective on a contract provision?
Well, the first thing is it's relationship, right? I mean, and we do have a relationship, so that helps. And this is why I believe this opportunity is unique for us as educators to send an educator to the fifth floor because we have those relationships. So that's the first thing I want to highlight, because it's hard to call someone if you don't have a relationship with. But it was also, certainly motivated by rank and file members as well as those in leadership. And those relationships, the inquisitiveness, the practice that we have in school communities, along with the relationship, of course, that you have fortified with the leadership of the CTU, all of that working together has placed us in an incredible, unique opportunity to actually have a school district that is genuinely collaborative with teachers, administrators, parents, other stakeholders. Troy, you've known this. I've called for open bargaining on a regular, consistent basis because I do trust parents. I do trust administrators. I do trust teachers. Teachers do trust the leadership of the CTU because they voted for them, right? And so we have a collective responsibility, but more importantly, an opportunity to grow these relationships so that we can actually have a school district that reflects the best part of our values.
Okay.
I actually believe it's a remarkable opportunity for us to do something where we can elect an educator, because we're all educators, to the fifth floor. And not just electing an educator, but someone who has the values of the city of Chicago, someone who has incredible incentive for the city of Chicago to work. I'll arguably be the first mayor who relies upon all of public accommodations, from transportation to our healthcare system here, to our education system here, right? These are all the things that we have fought for. These are the things that we have educated our communities around, how to make sure that we're investing in the very ideas and not just concepts, but the systems that provide quality support and care for people. It would be a unique opportunity for us to do something that Dr. King said, that if we can figure it out politically in the city of Chicago, we can do it anywhere in the world. And those were his words. And of course, we know he said those words when he came to Chicago and laid his head on the west side of Chicago. So we do claim Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. as a West Sider. I don't think it's a coincidence that it's April 4th, Election Day, where we can actually send a message to the rest of the country, not just commemorating his life and thinking about his assassination, but really thinking about the resurrection of the city of Chicago and doing it through our public education system. So I humbly ask for the support and the votes of the very educators that are already transforming lives. Thank you both.
Would you fully implement the consent decree?
Well, first of all, the contract that I negotiated included all the accountability provisions that were being demanded of the FOP. So that was included. So that's very consistent with the consent decree. I said the consent decree is the floor, not the ceiling. But let me tell you the fundamental difference between me and Johnson. I came in to help negotiate a contract between the FOP and the city that kept 2,500 cops from retiring. Because imagine your members not getting a pay raise for 4, 5, 6 years.
We went 7 years.
But you went 7 years. So you imagine that
it,
already. You felt it. But imagine the teachers union, had they gone, they would have shut down the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did. Even though they got offered the richest contract in history, they still shut down the system. But so there were 2,500 police officers eligible for retirement. There would have been a mass exodus. I agreed to help on the negotiations, conditional that they had to accept the accountability provisions in the sergeant's contract. And you can ask Rod Sawyer, who was the author of those accountability provisions, Alderman Rod Sawyer. And I said, you can't pay me. So they didn't pay me a dime. They donated the money to a children's charity. Last time I looked, Johnson is still on the salary. Is still on the payroll. I don't know, he's earning anywhere from $80,000 to $100,000 from, Chicago Teachers Union. And in fact, when he talks about being a teacher and the teacher being the only job is the job that has meant the most to him, well, he only spent 4 years as a teacher in a school that I built, Jenner in Cabrini Green. So yet when he retires, he's going to get a teacher pension because his years as a union organizer on the payroll of the CTU is going to go into his teacher pension. So at the end of the day, number one, he's paid by the CTU. Number two, he continues to be paid by the CTU. And number three, the CTU is responsible for about 80% plus of his funding, either directly or through their associations. And some teachers just sent me a notice that apparently the CTU informed their members that they're taking money out of their monthly dues and they're dedicating it to his campaign fund, to his campaign. So, if there's anything more unethical than that, I don't know what is. I've never accepted a penny from the Fraternal Order of Police, and I've refused any contributions, despite the fact that the rank and file members voted to like donate $150,000, which of course I declined because I said I'm going to take no money from either the FOP or the sergeants unions, because this was about helping the police officers get a contract. It wasn't about me working to get any FOP endorsements.